Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fight for Liberty show. Tonight, we have a pretty special event. We are hosting again, I keep saying the word debate. It's not going to really be much of a debate because it's two awesome guys who are going to have an awesome conversation about the future of the Oklahoma Libertarian Party. So I'll bring them in one by one. Please welcome Mr. Kevin Hobbie.
Hey, guys. David, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And then Mr. Rex Lawhorn.
Hey, folks. It's good to see you again. Glad to be here 1 week later, this time joined by my good friend, Mr. Hobbie.
Right. I'm
so glad to do this.
Thankful you guys could both come on, and both separately, and then again for this, because this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thanks for doing one episode each and then having both of us on.
Right.
Yeah, fantastic.
I have to say the amount of respect between the two of you, the fact that I had Kevin on, and then we talked about this debate, and Kevin was the one that was like, well, Rex should go on your show by himself first so that it's an even playing field. And I'm like, okay, this is just the most respectful race. I've never seen a debate where in the backstage before the debate we're giving out sock recommendations. So I'm ready that we can disagree on things in a pleasant, friendly manner.
Yeah, well, I mean, every disagreement doesn't have to be a fight. I mean, there are a couple of things that we disagree on, but for the most part, we both just want better for the OKLP. So there's no reason to get catty or nasty or anything like that. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Rex. Rex and I were friends before. We're going to be friends after. There's no reason for this to be nasty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the absolute truth. I think you and I talked last week, David, about the fact that argumentation isn't a point of contention. It's not something that you use to drive wedges between each other. It's a tool that you use to bring each other closer to each other. You either find out you're wrong and fix it, or you find out you're right and go forward with confidence from there. So,
yeah, I think that we as the Libertarian Party can benefit from some more of that mentality in our midst.
Absolutely.
But I'll start it off with probably the more contentious side of things, just to actually make it start out somewhat like a debate. I'll go Rex first. What is or let me phrase this properly. Which do you think is more important to the Libertarian Party, membership or electoral victories?
That's a hard one to answer, and this is going to seem like a cop-out answer, but Kevin and I have actually been having this conversation lately. It's not one or the other, because both are dependent on each other. It's in order to get people elected, you have to have membership. In order to get membership, candidates are the number one recruitment tool that you use to bring people into the party. So it's not an either-or situation, but if I had to say it, if I had to make this a chicken or the egg scenario, I would say the chicken. You've got to have the candidates out there that bring in the recruitment, because you can start a party with one person if that one person is an effective recruiter. But then at the same time, you can't get people elected without membership. So.
All right. I have to definitely agree that it's a two-pronged approach. I'm curious, Kevin, do you have a similar answer?
Mine is chicken or egg, right? So that's the decision. I believe that membership should come first, though, because I believe that the best candidates that we have out there are not active at this moment. They're people that are up and coming. They're people that are part of the party, but haven't really got a chance to go out there. They're people that are too young to know where they stand and things like that. Because if we continue to focus on these candidates that we have some superstar candidates, first of all. You got Chris Powell. He just dominated his city council race. You got Chad. You got David Greer. I mean, we've had a lot of really great elected officials, but I think that our best candidate, I think that our governor is somebody who's not an active member right now. And I think that if we get out there and we show people that what we're doing matters, the person who might be the next governor, the person that might be the first elected congressman or senator in Oklahoma may not even be a libertarian right now. They may be a closet, Republican or Democrat that's liberty curious.
Yeah. I love that. So I agree with the that the dichotomy is a little off, but I was asked that question for you guys. I asked a couple of people in your state party, like, what did you want to hear from this debate? And that was something that I got from two different people. So I was like, okay, I have to ask that question. I have to put up that dichotomy. And honestly, I was expecting it to go the other way around. I thought you guys were going to pick the opposite points, like if I made you guys pick. So that's kind of interesting.
Well, what's funny about it is I know Rex feels the same way, but we're both, I mean, if you're talking about, I'm not 100% that way. I'm probably 95% that way. And I bet Rex is 95% the other way. They go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. It's not a either or situation. It's a both. Yeah.
I really like, I agree with both of your follow-ups heavily that I think that candidates are the most important recruitment tool, but I also agree with you, Kevin. I don't think any of our big wins coming up this year or these next couple of years are currently in the party. I am 100% agreement that like our 2024 presidential candidate is probably doesn't even know the word libertarian right now if we want to win.
Well, I mean, that's possible, but I think our 2024 candidate is probably going to be somebody that's a little bit more of a big name libertarian right now, if I were to guess. I don't know where Rex sits with that, but I know traditionally, if you look at like what happened with Amash in the last election, he was clearly a favorite among people that weren't inside the Libertarian Party. But once he came in, he kind of strolled in thinking that he was going to take the whole thing, and everybody that had been here doing the work, those candidates that have been there going from the jump, kind of rooted him out because libertarians are very, territorial is not the word, but libertarians can see a grifter whenever they see one, Yeah. I don't know what Rex thinks, but that's my opinion.
Well, see, I think part of the problem is that libertarians see grifters in everyone. Jesus Christ could walk into our party, proclaim himself a libertarian, and 75% of the party would try to kick him out.
Well, yeah, because he'd be a like far left extremist, anarchist. That
of course,
like.
But yeah, I have to go. The membership is the key. The membership is the difference between electoral success and not electoral success. Ultimately, that has got to be where the party drives. We have to drive participation. We have to drive voters. We have to drive people on the ground to work these campaigns when the good campaigns come up. It's like Joe could have had an excellent year here in Oklahoma because though Trump has his following and he's popular in our red state, the majority of the Republican rank and file are not that hardcore redneck incivility in politics type of person. They're not what people are painting as Trump's base. His base is probably maybe 15 to 20% of the Republican Party here. And the rest of that party was looking for somebody else to vote for. Jorgensen might not have been the ideal candidate for them, but I can guarantee you that if Amash had been in this race last year, he could have won Oklahoma hands down.
Oh yeah, very easily.
Amash. No offense to the good doctor, but yeah, that was a rough time watching, because I was a Tulsi person and then she dropped out within like the same week of Amash announcing his exploratory committee. So I was pretty quickly able to just jump ship to Amash and be like, well, this is the person I wanted all along anyway, so howdy ho, and went like 2 months strong for Amash, and then he just out of nowhere just like
well, he didn't get the love and support that he was expecting. I mean, that's really what happened with that one. There were a lot of people that came out hard against him when he just jumped in, because the way that our system is set up, anybody can jump in right there at the end, and it's kind of like, these other people have been running the marathon, they've done all the debates, they've done all this, And so they've kind of done the work, and that's been a big shift that we've seen in the Libertarian Party really since I've come here is people are focusing more on doing the work. And so when you see somebody jump in at the last minute, it doesn't matter. Like Rex said, it could have been Jesus Christ himself. It could have been, the Prophet Muhammad. It could have been whoever. And it wouldn't have mattered because they jumped in at the last minute. And you had all these libertarians that had been putting in the work and out there proclaiming the libertarian name, because being a POTUS candidate for the Libertarian Party is not a glamorous thing. You're basically sacrificing your time and money in order to spread the message of liberty and give voter access to, or ballot access to, people that probably hate you. It's not you're basically a martyr on behalf of the party, because we're a long ways away from winning a presidential election. So you're spending your own money. You're out there begging people for money. You're taking hits on behalf of other people. And it's just it's not something that anybody would want to do, unless they really believe in the message of liberty. So when you have these people that have been there from the jump, and then you have somebody like Amash jump in, and something else that doesn't get talked about a lot was Judge Jim Gray jumped in pretty late too. Him and Larry Sharp, excellent ticket, very, very prominent libertarian voice in Larry Sharp, elected official and the judge, and people really didn't like them either for the same reason. And that's something that people need to keep in mind whenever they think about doing these races and jumping in at the last minute, or saying Tulsi or Amash or somebody like this is going to jump in, because if they jump in last minute, they'll get banished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had very similar feelings about Judge Jim Gray when it happened. I think the issue with him specifically is that nobody knows the amount of work that he has put in. The fact that he has been like a big L libertarian for quite some time and doing the work there. I agree that, he jumped in and he hadn't been putting in that campaign work. And so there was that issue. But a lot of people are just like, who the fuck is this guy? Like most of my friends that came in through like Gary Johnson or Larry Sharp had no idea who Jim Gray was. I had heard the name a couple times, but I really wasn't familiar with his career or what he had done. It was just kind of this other old white dude wants to be president.
Right. But people aren't familiar with the work. Most people only know Larry Sharp because he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. Mm-hmm. I mean, for real, anybody outside of the Libertarian Party doesn't really know who he is other than that, And so when you got somebody like Judge Jim Gray jump in to a race, there's a lot of people that just don't know who he is, because a lot of people, especially a lot of voters, they're not plugged into the political system. They have no reason to. They don't pay attention to elections. They don't do anything like that because they feel like it doesn't affect their day to day. But, if somebody's on the Joe Rogan podcast, that's a big deal to them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what hurt Jim Gray. Amash had a lot of, media and stuff like that. So he was a bigger name coming in. But Jim Gray didn't have that. Larry Sharp did. But that ultimately wasn't enough to help his ticket. Another thing that Jim did was, he supported a negative income tax, UBI type thing, which is pretty controversial amongst libertarian circles. He also was taking more of a pragmatic approach when more people have a more radical approach. He wanted to incrementalize it and get people adjusted to libertarianism, which a lot of people stand against, and so that hurt him. And then, ultimately Larry Sharp wasn't enough to hold him up. But the big thing that killed him from the jump was that he came in kind of at the end after all these people had been making these sacrifices and stuff. Like Kokesh bought a tour bus and then it broke down several times and he had to ask people for money to help him and all these other things. Like those are sacrifices. Those are, monetary, those are measurable sacrifices that people have been making during this election that, for somebody to swoop in and take it at the end, a lot of people had a bad taste in their mouth.
Well, see, and this is something that I want to bring up along those lines, because something that neither one of you mentioned in that is that Judge Jim Gray was our 2012 vice presidential candidate under Gary Johnson. Mm-hmm. I mean, so there's this impression that he came in at the last second and, he was just trying to sweep in at the last minute. That's total hogwash. That is total failing on our delegates' part to not pay attention to the resume, to not pay attention to the work. Everybody was so eager to jump on Hornberger's train because, he was fighting for the presidential candidacy back when Harry Brown was in there. And, but then, Jim Gray was an excellent vice presidential candidate for us. He did fantastic work supporting Gary Johnson. He's already been on the tour. He would have been a supreme candidate. And he wasn't my first choice, but he was right up there at the top. Joe was probably toward the bottom of my list by the time convention rolled around. But
she was completely off my list.
Yeah. There was no
I
activity.
really thought she was gone. I called it in February of or way early on that I thought she was the next to go. Like I did not.
I think what she did a really good job of was making sure that people didn't hate her, because the way that we do our voting and stuff, that's really the way to win an election. If you're not the first pick, we're not Ricky Bobby, you can be second and still win. So because of the ranked choice voting and stuff like that, what she did a good job of was she stayed quiet and under the radar enough that people didn't hate her. So nobody would put her at the bottom, but people were like, man, she's okay. She ran, I think, was it 96?
Long time Brown's against Hornberger.
Yeah.
She was Harry Brown's VP against Hornberger.
Yeah. So I actually, while we're on the topic of former and possible presidential candidates, I want to bring up two that don't get talked about quite as often. I'm curious, still from fairly recent though. Lincoln Chafee did not stay in the race for very long, but had a lot of conversation around him. And I'm also curious of your guys' opinions of the John McAfee 2016 campaign and how that could have compared in the election.
Who wants to go first?
Okay, so let me start with John McAfee on that one. We had our own John McAfee in 2018 in our gubernatorial race here in Oklahoma with Joe Exotic. I can tell you from firsthand experience that is a nightmare for whoever winds up winning the presidential ticket, because they are forever painted with any bit of insanity that came out of any of the campaigns. In 2016, we were still dealing with James Weeks' activity on stage. They were using that to discredit Gary Johnson. Mm-hmm. So, anytime you have a candidate like that, sure, it is great for visibility, but when ultimately a serious contender winds up winning, they're still going to lose because that candidate is not going to be talked about in the same way. If Gary didn't have his own history, if he wasn't a successful 2-term governor in New Mexico, he would have been completely erased right off the bat, because they would have had nothing to compare against the media storm that John McAfee can bring. Lincoln Chafee is another one of those big names that came in at the last minute, and he had a player, Christopher Thrasher, was trying to run interference for him and promote him and to get everybody on board and everything. But it's the same thing. It's the big name fatigue. We tried Gary Johnson for 2 years. We had Barr, we had Henderson, we had all of these names that came in that performed better than our candidates, but they were kind of milquetoast and didn't really do a lot to further the liberty movement. So if we're going to lose big, we might as well lose big with a bold voice, is the mentality of most of the people who vote for a presidential candidate. And because of that, people like Chafee, who was kind of milquetoast even in his own party, isn't going to get a lot of traction until that mentality changes within our party, because our party tends to select a candidate not for who's going to appeal to the public, but who's going to appeal to us. And that's a problem. That handicaps our presidential ticket from being able to make any liberty headway with the general public. Mm-hmm. Your turn, Kevin. Sorry.
I feel the same way about McAfee. I mean, when you start talking about him or Joe Exotic, for example, which was really good. That's a really good comparison. If you have these people that have this large following and they come in, but it's mostly because they're notorious for something, like John McAfee to me would be the exact same as if like Dan Bilzerian runs in 2024 under the Libertarian ticket. I mean, he has a big following. He kind of has this little bit of fame, whatever. But as far as like his political views and stuff like that, I mean, he's kind of all over the place. You see him say different things one day versus the next, because one of the things about the Libertarian Party is that it's small. So you can be a big fish in a small pond really, really easy. And so if you come in with just a little bit of clout, then that's what happens. And when you have people like him, like Joe, if they act a little crazy, then they can get some of the public eye. And whenever you have the Republicans and the Democrats basically controlling most of the media, when we have somebody that's a little bit crazy, they get a whole bunch more attention just because they need to paint us in that light. They don't want to paint our good candidates. They don't want to paint, like, how many times have you seen the argument over driver's license posted again, or Gary Johnson talking about Aleppo and stuff like that, but you didn't see the big time debate performances that he had. You didn't see the good showings that they have because it's it's amplified by the media. When it comes to Lincoln Chafee, man, I mean, I like his strategy. You know, if you're not successful as a Republican, be a Democrat. If you're not successful as a Republican or a Democrat, be an independent. If you're not successful as an independent, be a libertarian. I mean, I'm sure he'll run for the Green Party next year. But whenever we have somebody like that has a pattern of coming in and jumping ship, you see that in my business all the time. When you're a consultant, you see somebody that will jump from one job to another. If they get like an extra $5 a day or $10 a day or whatever, we call them jumpers. That's what he is. And he was pretty easily weeded out to be that. You know, he kept getting smaller and going, and yeah, he had some success before, but like I said, it's that big fish, small pond mentality. So you can come in and you can bring a lot of clout. You can be somebody in this party relatively easy because everybody has, you know, small followings. There's not a lot of us, et cetera, et cetera. You can be a big name really quick. And so when you see somebody that's coming in like a McAfee or a Chafee, for whatever reason, they're just looking to be a big fish in a little pond. As for their, you know, viewpoints on spreading liberty or anything like that, I would question it.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to personally the big fish in the little pond thing, because somehow I got like 500 extra followers on Twitter and became somebody that people cared what it thought, and got invited on like shows like yours. And, you know, I'm all of a sudden like somebody that knows people, and I'm not anyone. I should be a small fish, even in the small pond, but somehow got big because Twitter. But yeah, I liked Chafee somewhat when he came in. I had a good friend whose name I won't mention because I don't want to call her out, but she was very big on Chafee like before he even joined the party. And so I looked him up and I was like, no, this dude literally left the Republican Party because they were too anti-tax. Like, that was the first fact that I found out about him, and I was just instantly like, no, like, nope, this guy is a joke. And then I actually got to talk to him about that specifically and a couple of other things. And I met him after he joined the party, but before he joined the race. He was kind of doing a tour of like state meetings, and so I met him at the New Hampshire state meeting, and you know, he was really pleasant. He's really shifty. You could tell he's just a politician. Like, you can just tell that that's who he is. But I was definitely in a headspace of maybe that's what we need. Like, maybe that's not terrible of an idea. Maybe we can build on the Gary Johnson kind of thing and keep going with a legitimate Libertarian Party. I was of a mindset that, like, if we ran somebody serious in the main years, you know, we could go Gary, then Lincoln, and then, you know, somebody else like Amash, you know, somebody that's like principled and normal and palatable. Then we can run like Vermin Supreme for governor in random states, and, you know, like do crazy shit in our local areas. And I don't think that way anymore. But I don't think the calm mentality is going to work anymore.
I think that's a pretty common theme whenever you first come in, and then as you transition. Because I remember when I first came in, and the first time we were talking about open versus closed primaries, and I was just like, hey, look, like, primaries need to be open because there's more independents than there are libertarians. We can appeal to these guys, blah, 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 blah. And then people were like, oh, well, you know, somebody can come in and take over. And I'm like, man, look, nobody cares enough about us to take over. But then you see it. Then you see there's little things that have happened where you're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, some people will come in here for that clout. So then you transition away. I have almost gone because I was team anybody but Vermin Supreme, right? And literally, I didn't care. If we took the boot off of his head and that was our candidate, as long as Vermin wasn't the candidate, because I was just like, man, it's going to be a total embarrassment, et cetera, et cetera. Now I almost have the opposite. I think if we run candidates like that are loud and get that as a presidential candidate, just because the presidential candidate is for ballot access. That's what it is. We need to be focused more on very, very small local races, city council races, things like that, school board, and et cetera, because you don't want to be like, say you're a libertarian candidate, right? Well, you've got to teach people about all these things that have to do with libertarianism and what a libertarian is, right? If you're running for, let's say, Congress or Senate, because it's a big, a lot of eyes on it. But if you're just the guy that's running for city council, right, and then you tell people that you're a libertarian, and then like you win your race, and then a couple of years later you run for something like that, then it's not that libertarian. It's Rex Lawhorn. It's David Fite. Oh, I know him. Like, I've seen him down at the VFD. He's the city councilman from wherever. Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, he just so happens to be a libertarian. I think that's the way to go. If you run those big names like that to get ballot access, then that's cool. But I think we as a party need to focus less on that and more on very, very small local races in order to make it more palatable for people what a libertarian is.
Cheers to that. Yeah, I agree. I kind of switched my mentality. I used to think that as long as our national branding was tame, that we could do whatever we wanted on a local level. But that doesn't work because what we do on a local level affects our national branding. The same, like James Weeks could have stripped at a state convention. It still would be what we're labeled for.
Right? Yeah, 100%.
It doesn't matter that was on a national stage, and it would be what we're known for regardless. So I think we can lean into that on the national stage and just, like you said, get ballot access with a Vermin Supreme, who I think could have gotten 5% in 2020. I think we could have broken that benchmark this year if we ran Vermin Supreme. And then it's a lot easier to legitimize the party on the local level, like person to person, than it is to try to legitimize on a national level all the fucked up shit that we did in the last 3 years.
I don't think that's true. And I hear that argument made every cycle. I wasn't active in the national party in 2012, but I was in 16 and 20. And when I am talking to Oklahomans, like when I was on the campaign in 2018, I would talk to the Tulsa County GOP chairman, for example, and he'd be like, yeah, but your national secretary has pink hair and she's crazy. And you guys had this person at your national convention that stripped on their stage. Do you guys want to be taken seriously? Because I know you, Rex. Rex, you're a good guy. You have great ideas. You've got good things, but I can't back someone that's who their leadership is. And it's an excuse, right? That's not really why they don't want to back me. They don't want to back me because they haven't gotten past their cognitive dissonance that Republicans don't give two shits about liberty. They care about being socialist on the other side of the scale. And they know that intellectually, but their heart isn't telling them that yet. So they're looking for any excuse they can find to legitimize people that they think is better than what they think should be the right candidate. So it doesn't matter what we put forward. They are going to find a way to discredit them. They used Gary Johnson with his Aleppo. They used his heart attack on the stage, which wasn't even a campaign thing. It was appropriate for the forum that they were in.
Yeah.
But
it was beautiful. My favorite moment in libertarian history.
It's fantastic. But they use that to legitimize us simply because they can't get past their own cognitive dissonance. They don't take us seriously, and they use those examples. Nobody on the Democrat side ever talked about the fact that Vermin Supreme is running their presidential primary like 3 out of the last 4 cycles. Nobody had brought that up. But just the fact that he was a candidate on ours, even though that he took 3rd or 4th, it still was something that was brought up during this election cycle to legitimize Joe. And that's just because they look for any excuse they can. It's not fair. It's not right. But we absolutely have to hold ourselves to a higher standard and put forth a higher image so that the public does not have an excuse to not listen to what we have to say. So that's just my perspective. That's been my experience with it.
I've been inclined to agree with you on that for quite some time, but I guess what the question that's popping up in my head that's started to move me away from that stance is is the damage already done? Like, do we have the ability to really recover from James Weeks and Vermin Supreme?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, look at, obviously we have varying opinions on this, but look at Stacey Abrams. I mean, she lost her race and then paraded around like she won for what's it been now, 3-4 years, and most of her party still acts like she won this race that she didn't, that she lost pretty handedly. And I think anybody can come back from anything, but I just think that every party has their ridiculousness. The thing about it is that we have to agree that the larger parties control the media. We're never going to be able to change that narrative. We're not going to be able to change what CNN puts out. We're not going to be able to change what Fox News puts out. But what we are going to be able to do is change what KXII down in Rex's part of the world puts out, what K10 puts out, what Fox 23 in OKC or Tulsa, whichever one it is that it's there, puts out. And so that's where we're going to make the biggest impact. As far as what's going on there, if you look at Democrats that win traditionally in rural areas in Oklahoma, because there's still this belief that blue dog Democrats exist, they don't even discuss like AOC and these other things that are happening. And I think that we need to take that same approach. If whoever on the national level wants to run and they win it or whatever, but I think that we need to stop focusing so much on the LNC and the presidential candidates and focus on our states, because that's where we're going to make the most impact in the everyday Americans' lives. And so I'm not as worried about what they're doing.
That's fair. So I do have to go to the comments real quick because this one's too great. We recovered from bar. We can recover from anything. That one had to get brought up. So yeah, I agree that we can recover. I just don't know if we can like button ourselves up and recover in that way. And like pretend that we don't have Vermin Supreme and Karen Ann Harlos in our party. It's like, Karen Ann does great work as the secretary of the LNC. She's going to stay there, like most likely. She's got a lot of people that love her. I like her. She's not going anywhere. So I feel like if there's people that aren't going to support us because there's someone with pink hair on our national committee, which is a dumb reason not to support us anyway, I think they're going to find a reason no matter what. And maybe the people that are going to support a ticket like Vermin Supreme are more of our allies right now. They're more ready to take the jump.
Well, I just think that this idea that we can't recover is absolutely insane. When you look at the Democrats, the party of the KKK, the party of the South, who is now the party of every minority ever. I mean, they radically changed their messaging and the way that they were taken over the course of 100 years. I mean, just think about that. They're the party of peace that started almost every war we've ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
the Republicans had a lot to help with that one.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of stole the shitty party out from under the Democrats, and the Democrats were like, okay, I guess we got to be the party of the people now.
Right. Well, and also the Democrats stole a lot of their messaging from us. Let's not forget that we supported gay marriage about 40 years before the Democrats did. And that's a part of our messaging that doesn't get brought up a lot, is that, we are the more socially progressive, but we've had that messaging stolen from us by the Democrats. You can spin anything you want to. I know people with missing teeth that tell people they got a gap.
Yeah. And there's another thing to think about also. The old parties tend to switch cycles, right? The Republicans have gone right over the last 25 years. The Democrats have come left over the last 25 years. And it gets to the point where if you look at the Republicans in the early 70s, they were the people that were fighting for labor rights and that sort of thing. And the Democrats were the ones with the conservative social values, fighting against the civil rights movement and such. So, and that's something, they don't have principle. They don't have standards. So they're free to flip back and forth as society changes, which is what happens. A new issue comes on the horizon and one of them decides they're going to go one way. So the other one automatically decides they're going to go the other way on it. And they wind up being in conflict with each other. So then they've got to spend the next 10 years rectifying their principles. So at least they're putting out a consistent message. The Libertarian Party message has not changed fundamentally in the entire 50 years of its existence. We have always been for drug legalization. We have always been for sex workers' rights. We have always been for loose immigration standards. We have always been for gay and trans rights. We have been for all of these things that in more recent years, the Democrats and Republicans have both co-opted. The only reason they're able to do that is because they have so much larger membership than we do. They have so many more famous people we do that get the media and airtime that it gets associated with them. But we have been the driving force behind all of these changes for the last half century.
Right. I'm a big fan of, we have a outreach director, I think is his title, for the Queen's Libertarian Party, that ran a marketing campaign for a little while of the first party, rather than being a third party. And, it was just about all of the issues that are super mainstream right now that we've supported in 1971 when we were formed. And it's a long list of things. They've co-opted almost one or the other side has co-opted most of our talking points and then bastardized them.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, go ahead, Rex.
That's all I was going to say. That's what they do. They take somebody else's good idea and twist it to their advantage and then tell the public that they are doing something for them when in secret they are actually trying to do something to gain advantage for their own political party. This HR1 thing that's going on right now at the national level, right? They're talking about election integrity and all that sort of thing. But truth of the matter is they're just trying to steal control. That's all they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fact.
Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
HR1 is a clusterfuck, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Kevin, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I think that what has really screwed us in that deal is that we have that messaging, all of those things that Rex mentioned, they're things that are very rarely brought up in marketing for the LP. So like what's really happened is that these have been taken from us and then we've kind of abandoned them in the marketing phase of it. Like when you talk about most of the marketing being pushed towards Republicans, look at presidential candidates. How many former Democrats have been presidential candidates for the LP? How many former Republicans have? How many people that were Republicans, I don't know, 6 weeks before were? It's because we've abandoned these things and we're not sticking up for them. We focus more on these economic principles and these other things and just, we market ourselves as Republicans, Republican light, whatever. That's a marketing ploy. Yeah, I really hate that one, man. Republicans that smoke weed. I don't like that. I prefer spicy Republicans. Republicans that support gun rights, Republicans that support whatever, but in reality, we're not Republicans. We're not Democrats. We're not anything. We're libertarians. We have our own messaging. We have our own thing. We need to focus on all of it. Now, we probably don't need to be going to the general public and being like, hey, heroin for toddlers or whatever it was that Austin Peterson said, but we can make it more palatable. We can focus on things. I would like to see in Oklahoma, I would like to see us focus on 3 main things: recreational marijuana legalization, doing away with the state income tax, and becoming a 2A sanctuary. A lot of those things are being helped out by Republicans, obviously, some of the things are being fought by Republicans, but we need to do that as our own. We don't need to say like, hey, we're just like Republicans on this, but this, or we're a little bit more Republican in this because the Republicans don't support this anymore. They only say that they do or whatever. Or, hey, the Democrats stole this from us. We don't need to take that messaging of being like the bitter X, right? We need to take it as, hey, this is our messaging. And if somebody brings it up and says like, oh, you sound like a Republican or a Democrat, actually, we sound like libertarians. They're the ones that sound like us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we faced for a long time because there's this entire language that evolves in the politisphere, right? Words mean things. And if you are just talking to your buddy on the street about something outside of politics, they mean one thing. But then you bring them into the political sphere and they mean something entirely different. Like if I'm sitting here and I'm going to talk to you about a bigot, you're not going to think I am talking about libertarian philosophy. You're going to think I'm talking about democratic philosophy. When I talk about gun rights, people don't associate that in the general public with libertarians. They associate that with Republicans. So a lot of this language has been associated with either of the old parties. There was a forum in particular I did during the campaign race down in Tahlequah, where we are, all 3 parties are up there on the stage. There's 15 or 18 of us that ran for governor, and we're all up there on the stage, and it just has our name. It doesn't have our political affiliation. And they neglected to mention that ahead of time. So we're going through there and we're talking about things like the economy and the budget, right? And of course, I sound very Republican on those issues. We get to talking about weed or healthcare, something along those lines. I'm like, yes, everybody should have equal right to access to healthcare. That's a very libertarian position, right? You shouldn't be able to discriminate against someone for access to healthcare. That doesn't mean we're going to provide it, but they automatically associate that with the Democrats because everybody has a right to healthcare. So that language where you just say even access to healthcare, they don't associate that. They use that with the dog whistles that they've been spending billions of dollars to reinforce with the public. So it's not only the fact that we've got to say this is libertarian messaging, we've got to create our own language, something that is not previously associated with either of the old two parties. Because by the end of that Tahlequah forum, people gasped when they announced that I was a libertarian. They couldn't even guess. Most of them probably didn't even realize there were libertarians running. And that's another hurdle we have to overcome. And like Kevin said, I think that's through the marketing sphere.
I agree. So we'll go to the comments for some questions for you guys. There's a couple have come in. And we were talking earlier about how important messaging or membership was. So I was almost going to ask this myself. What are your guys' plans to grow the membership of the OKLP?
My plan is so right now we have 15,000 registered libertarians. We have like 130 something active dues paying members of the party, even less than that, and are actually active in the day-to-day. And I think that a lot of that has to do with, one, a lot of the libertarians that are registered libertarians are unaware that the state party is active. They can see the website, they can see these things, but we're not out there. We are the only political party, the only major political party in Oklahoma that wasn't at the OKC Marathon. We're the only major political party that wasn't at the OKC National Bombing Memorial. We're the only political party that isn't setting up booths at these fairs. We need to be out there in front. We need to be just right alongside Democrats and Republicans saying, hey, not only are we here, but we're just as legitimate as them. These are our ideas. This is how we're supporting the community. We need to be focusing on food drives, neighborhood cleanups. We need to be focusing on, Democrats and Republicans. Whenever I spent time at OU Children's Hospital with my son, Democrat and Republicans have people coming in and reading storybooks to kids, to sick kids there. We obviously can't do that in the time of COVID, but I didn't see a libertarian doing that. That's voluntarism 101. That is our message that is being stolen from us again. I believe that we need to do something really radical and prove that our ideas work before we try to sell them. We need to be out there showing that volunteerism works and that people can take care of people. They don't need the government to do it. Once people see that we're not only active, but we're doing things in the community, even if they're not libertarians right now, they're going to want to be, because they're going to see that these things happen. These things work. We're actually practicing what we preach.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback off what Kevin was saying. There's about 140 members of the Oklahoma Libertarian Party. We've got like 15,200 registered libertarians politically. Why aren't they members? And like he said, it's because they don't know that we exist. However, part of the reason that we don't have so many active people this year, you got to keep in mind, we just came off the most successful convention ever. We sold 80 tickets. Only 25 people were able to show up for business, though. A lot of this was COVID restrictions. People didn't want to be out there for the COVID, during the COVID. So we had a pretty significant setback. Last year, we could have had so many more people that would have been involved in working to further liberty through the LP this year had we've been able to have more attendance. And that's a trend that we've been seeing. More and more people are showing up. More and more people at roughly the same percentage levels are investing their registration in the Libertarian Party. But what we're not seeing is those people with their boots on the ground, just like Kevin said. My plan regarding that specifically, growing membership, is twofold. One, I want to see more social media activity out of the party. I want them to spend $100 a month boosting posts on Facebook and the other social media venues in order to boost our visibility to the people of Oklahoma, not just to gain registrations, but saying, hey, come be part of the change you want to see. You can be a delegate. You don't have to get elected in your precinct. You don't have to get handpicked by the executive committee. You just have to show up. So if you want to be the change you want to see, show up. Pushing forth that kind of messaging. I also would like to see a couple of billboards in the metro areas with and I am not a marketing person by any stretch of the imagination, so I've got to leave it to someone a lot more creative, but there's this image out there. Yeah. There's this image out there that libertarians are hard, right? That's what it is. They want to take away grandma's Social Security and they want to put poor people out on the street. That's not the case at all. That's the image that we have to change. Part of that is, just something matter. Let them see that we are family. We are your average everyday individuals that just want to be out from under the restrictive boot of the state. And, a happy family with something up there saying, we want you to live your best life. Oklahoma Libertarian Party, OKLP.com. Just something to inspire people and trigger it in their head. And something like a billboard, there's a sales thing that says somebody has to see something 7 times before it sticks. Well, if they're driving back and forth to work, they're going to see it 100 times. And maybe it'll stick, and maybe they'll remember to go to oklp.org and check out and see what we're about and talk to some people, send an email. And then the third trigger is we have historically had an issue where the state party rightly believes that it is up to the local affiliates to be pushing out into the communities. It takes boots on the ground, and that's the responsibility of the regional and county affiliates. But we haven't done a good job of, as a state party, is supporting these affiliates in getting up and running. Because you got to keep in mind, it's like we were saying earlier, a lot of the people that are coming to the Libertarian Party are getting active in politics for the very first time. They don't know what they're stepping into. They don't have the background to, how do I properly get a permit to do this parade in this location? And what types of things do we need to do for this messaging, right? They're the people that have been standing on the sidelines watching the parade. So we need to put together some documentation for them to be able to go forward. We started that under Chad as part of our policy manual, but we didn't get nearly as far as we needed to on it. So, simple things like that are going to educate, encourage, and empower our local affiliates to get out there on the street and have these successful events. I think that's going to be our largest membership drivers.
I'm a big fan of events. I was actually my first role in the Libertarian Party officially was the events director for the New York City Party. It's something that I feel very strongly about, that the LP as a whole, it doesn't matter what state you're in. I think like California and Florida are both pretty good at that, so I'll leave them out of my dragging. But basically the rest of the country, like, we all suck at throwing events in a libertarian manner. Like we just don't do that in the way that the other parties do.
I will say we threw a couple of bomb events for Jo Jorgensen when she visited Oklahoma. One in OKC, one in Tulsa.
Yeah, Oklahoma's traditionally done pretty good. We had, like Rex said, we had a really successful convention, one that I was kept from coming in from COVID. So I think we do a good job in Oklahoma. The issue is that we just have not been out there. We're really good at doing things for us. We need to start doing things for our community, because if we continue to do this circle where it's just us, we're behaving like a fraternity and not a political party. We need to be out there. We need to be showing, hey, we have candidates. These are our candidates. The state party needs to be promoting these candidates and helping them with their messaging. One idea that I'm really big on is when it comes to the state income tax. I think that that's an easy sell. And the way that we do it is we steal from Andrew Yang and his idea. And what we do is we find some random families, preferably non-libertarian families, and we figure out what their state income tax is. And then we give that back to them to show them, hey, this is what you could do with this amount of money. This money is this amount of diapers, this amount of groceries, and all of these things, and let them see it, make it tangible, so that they have a real idea of what that is and what that feels like, how much is being taken from them. Mm-hmm. Did you get a little too much there, bud?
No, I'm laughing at the live chat on it because I just got asked to ask you guys your opinion on suspenders.
If Drew Cook is not wearing them, I don't support them. But Caleb England, his time is ticking up. If we don't get some pictures of him in them, because I guess there was a deal struck somewhere
in public.
in public, there's going to be repercussions. Both of us as chair have a gentleman's agreement. Caleb he's done if no suspender picks come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drew and Caleb both came down to my farm last weekend, and Caleb was making a lot of jokes toward Drew about his suspenders, but he was saying that he was serious. So the deal was struck is that there has to be a picture of him wearing suspenders in public by next Saturday. If they don't, then, like you said, Caleb's done.
Okay, this just makes me want to move to Oklahoma and be a part of your party. Honestly, the live chat the entire time makes me want to move to Oklahoma because these guys are hilarious.
Hey, we have a great time, man. We really do. There's so many great people in this party. We have so much fun. You have no idea.
By official proclamation, the OKLP is the best affiliate in the country.
For sure.
Yeah,
we were the official bad guys for the national convention. We censored Nicholas Sarwark. The Frankie Mermaid persona came about just as a front to the LNC. I mean, we got some great things going on. We got some great people out there that are really doing some good work, but we have a lot of fun in it too. We still fight and bicker just like anybody else, but at the end of the day, we all love one another. Truly.
That's an awesome thing to see because I can say that New York does not have that at all. We fight and bicker online, offline, and everything in between. It's not a healthy group. So it's nice to see that you guys are able to put your shit aside and get some work done.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's something that doesn't happen a lot in any organization, let alone us. I mean, Rex and I are technically opponents in this race, and we were talking about socks and coordinating our outfits earlier. So,
yeah, it was kind of funny seeing some people talk about the great battle that's coming with this debate, and I'm like, you know what? That is what the public perception is of what we're going to do. So, yeah, sure. If it'll sell and get viewers, let's go ahead. Let's call it a fight.
Yeah.
I need to ask some better questions. Make you guys actually get mad at each other. Is there like a sports team rivalry between your guys' regions or something that we can talk about?
No, I don't think so. I really think that you'd be hard pressed to see what people are expecting. We both Rex and I talk every day. I mean, we discuss things. We have, we do have different opinions on things, and we do have different ideas for what needs to happen. But at the end of the day, like, we're both just here spreading liberty, and that's what the big thing is. I don't think you're gonna see it, man. I don't.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Whichever one of us wins this race, the OKLP is in good hands. It's not going to be a problem ever.
No.
Is there a possibility of the second place gentleman going to and being vice chair, or is there already a vice chair person? I guess I could have looked that up.
There's already some vice chair candidates. If I'm not the winner, I will not be seeking a lower office. I will just be focusing on things with the Unity Caucus, focusing on spreading the message of liberty and all of those things, working with Rex and them to do it. But I think that there are qualified candidates for everything else. And just like I was talking about earlier, it wouldn't be fair for me to drop down at the last second and use the clout that I gained from this race to take that seat from somebody that's been campaigning for it the whole time and has a real passion for it. I'm going to continue to do the things that I plan on doing anyways, one way or another, whether I'm an elected official or not. It would almost be, there's a lot of people that have this belief that you have to be an elected official before you do something. And, I think that that's been kind of a topic that's been going around, is that people need to be active, but without being an elected official. So I will not be. I don't know what Rex's plan is, but I will not be. I might do something in Oklahoma County, but that waits to be seen.
Yeah, I will not be seeking another office either. The only reason that I am running for chair is because I believe that we have not yet had a chair that truly understands the structure of our party, how it's designed to work, and what the intended function of the executive committee is. And I mean, there's only one person sitting on that committee right now out of the 11 of them that was there in 2016. There is only one person, and that's the outgoing chair that was serving in a prior administration or even was affiliated with the Libertarian Party. Over half of our executive committee weren't Libertarians until 2019.
Wow.
So there's a lot of history and what I believe is a lot of misunderstanding of the structure. And I mean, some of these guys, they think I'm just the biggest jerk on the planet, but I am trying to keep us from going off the rails. And as chair, I believe I will be able to do that. Otherwise, if I am not sitting in that particular seat, I do not have the authority to be able to overcome a lot of the other strong personalities and ideas for the way the state party is supposed to operate. So I sit on the judicial committee right now. I am the chair of the rules committee, and I'm on the convention committee as well. I've been serving in all of these back roles since we started in 2016. This is the first time I've ever run for a state office. Kevin has more experience than me there. He was our vice chair last cycle. But if I don't win the chairmanship, I will not be able to achieve the objectives that I want to achieve. So there would be no point in me running for a lesser office. And I heartily approve and endorse the other candidates running in all those other seats. This is a year that the OKLP cannot go wrong.
I'm going to go to the comments again just because there seems to be a clarification question that I don't understand, but might be more relevant than I think. There was asked, does that count as a pledge to give our down ticket candidates room to run without worrying about floor nominations? So like accurate.
First of all, a floor nomination is where somebody's not running for something and then somebody nominates them from the. It's exactly what it sounds like. Yeah. I will not be. If somebody nominates me from the floor to run for an office on the XCOM, I will not accept. I think that the candidates that are there are strong. They've been running. They have their own ideas. They need the room to be able to do it. It's unfair for me to come in and do it. The things that I'm talking about doing as chair, I'm going to be doing regardless. And it's that's just the way it is. You know, if the rest of the XCOM and the rest of the party wants to follow me on this journey that I'm taking, then that's fine. But I'm going to continue doing it. I will not accept a floor nomination for anything else. Not that any of those roles are inferior or anything like that. I don't want it taken as that way. You know, I'm not going to take my ball and go home, but I will not be. There are people that want to fill those roles, that have the passion to fill those roles and have been running on it. It's unfair for me to come in and take it.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add that even though I'm not running for any of those lower seats, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be here either. You know, anybody that has been with the party ever can tell you that I am always in everybody's Kool-Aid all the time. And that has been the case since 2016. I am fortunate in the fact that I can call the last three chairs personal friends. Two of them have been to my home. You know, Kevin hasn't been able to make it yet because he's been up there in the frozen tundra, but he will be eventually coming down to Liberty Mountain Farms, sitting around the campfire with me, smoking a cigar or whatever his smoke of choice is. And we will be talking about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's the same situation for me. You know, Kevin's got the things that he's doing on the side that aren't related to the OKLP. I'm dealing with Liberty Mountain Farms, man. I'm in the middle of personally with my own hands building a house right now. And we are creating a self-sustainable environment to where we will eventually be able to invite other people to come learn how to do that for themselves. I'm an agorist at heart, and I want there to be as many agorists as possible out there. So we're building our structure to be able to create an entire generation of that. So, I mean, even if I am not serving on the OKLP, I will still be serving Liberty.
Yeah, 100%. Also, you need to get that TikTok up and going. You guys should be TikTok famous by now.
You're right. You're right.
That makes me really excited to hear because I've watched way too many candidates in the LP, you know, not get elected and take it to heart and, you know, go off and do something else, you know. But Kevin, as a founding member of the Unity Caucus, saying that if you lose this race, you'll be putting more work into the Unity Caucus kind of makes me want to root for Rex.
Oh man,
We can
it's true. Oh man, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there regardless. I just bringing the Unity Caucus coalition into Oklahoma and that type of thing. But I will be there regardless for both of them.
Yeah, and I want to give Kevin a shout out for a second, because he came into the party as a bottom unity guy, right? And there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that most of the public wasn't aware of, not even most of the Libertarian Party, is that was actually a duplicitous thing that they were using to try to drive a wedge between the members of the party. And eventually the truth of it came out. And, you know, Kevin had his own understanding of what that should have been. And he didn't just, you know, stop talking about unity at that point. He just did the 180 flip, made a complete and total rebrand, and took it in a new direction to what unity was supposed to be. So again, I just want to give the public props for that.
Big shout out to that. It was not my idea. It was Reed's idea. David came in, and then yeah, it's everything that I wanted it to be. So big shout out to David. Big shout out to Reed for getting that going, all the other members and all of that. But I will tell you 100% though, Rex was telling me the whole time with the bottom unity thing. He was like, listen, man, like I know where your heart's at, and I know all these ideas sound good to you, but it's not what you think it is. This is a Trojan horse, and this and this and this. And I was like, listen, man, like I'm 100% in this, and was just totally like, I was so into it that I was going to let Mike Shipley stay at my Airbnb for convention. Like I was so into it that like I was spreading this message. And then, you know, Rex was right. It came out to be the way that it was. There were things behind the scenes that I didn't know about. And it really sucks that messaging was used as a Trojan horse the way it was. But I do believe in unity, and I do believe in the message that the Unity Caucus is putting together and all of that.
Yeah, it definitely, it sucks that the same accusations are being given of the Liberty Unity movement, but the main people that started it are me and Reed and like Jeremy Todd and Elaine Joan. You know, they're just like people that we can all talk to, that whose cell phone numbers we all have, and can, you know, make sure that this isn't some weird scheme from any, like it's my scheme. Like, yeah, I'm a Trojan horse. I'm an infiltrator from the independent party because I think libertarians are stupid. Maybe like that's the only attack you could throw at me. So it's nice to see that there's a lot of people from the bottom unity train that have adopted this liberty unity thing and kept the party going. Honestly, like I'll tell you straight up, the main reason to me for the rebrand, because I didn't even know most of the bottom unity baggage until long after we started Liberty Unity. Part of my main reason for the rebrand was because I had been told at least a dozen times that bottom unity sounds like a sex thing.
I was pretty disappointed when I got there and realized it was a political one.
Well, you got to keep in mind, Jeff Wood was one of the founders, and anything that Jeff Wood can throw sexual innuendo into, he's going to.
Right. And like, it was a left libertarian kind of thing. And I kept hearing it from like most of my like super LGBT heavy, like positive friends. And I'm like, okay, so this is the thing about like bottoms being cool. I didn't really understand it, but I heard the term bottom unity probably like 20, 30 times before I ever realized it had anything to do with libertarianism.
Oh, have mercy.
Yeah, somebody made a meme the other day that had like the quadrant, right? And it had like the bottom left, and then it had carved out like two little squares of the libertarian right, and it was like what bottom unity really meant, you know? And so it was just like, and you can kind of see what's happening with, you know, the claims against Spike that are left over from the remnants of that and all of that. Even the claims against the Unity Caucus, I believe, are remnants of that belief, you know, of, you know, if you're not left libertarian, then you're not a libertarian, which is really ironic because the whole purpose of the bottom unity was to say like, hey, just because you're not a right-leaning libertarian or an ANCAP, you know, you're still a libertarian. and that was a really good messaging. I really do believe that, but the reality of what was happening behind the scenes was just, it was really, really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So, but shout out to Rex for seeing through that and Rex was showing me the light 2 years ago, and I just didn't believe him. I mean, really, I just, I thought, oh, like, this is just more of the right propaganda and blah, 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 blah. And it was just, once you're bought into that and you're in it, it's hard to see the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it plays into this duopoly mentality that we somehow like brought into the Libertarian Party. I think that's a big problem, because we still see it as like a two-way argument of right versus left. And what happened, from my observation, was that the bottom unity group, the left libertarians, were vying for legitimacy, right? They wanted to be treated as like a legitimate libertarian, which is fair, right? That's a completely fair ask. But what happened was a bunch of people hated the right more than they loved liberty. And so when they finally got the validation that they wanted, because now the quote unquote establishment, in like Nick Sarwark and Andy Craig and like a couple of the other people in that little club, are now shitting on the right constantly, they see them as an ally, and completely shifted the dynamic, because now they have an ally and they have a team to like shit on the people that they dislike. So now they're going and doing that. They don't have this anti-establishment mentality because the establishment's on their side now.
Right. Well, a lot of that comes from left libertarian. I'm a left libertarian, progressive libertarian, whatever you want to call it. It is hard because you see a lot of the messaging is tailored towards the right, and most of the big names in the party are right leaning. But the thing that always threw me off was I saw these issues that these left libertarians and these libsocks were having with right leaning libertarians, and then I'm having conversations with like Austin Peterson and Dave Smith and Todd Hagopian and all these people, and they're right leaning and I'm left, and it's like, yeah, we disagree on some things, but like they're all pretty cool with me, and so it was hard for me to process what was actually happening. But in reality, like you said, those people really hated the right more than they loved liberty. And at the end of the day, it's not left versus right. It's libertarians versus authoritarians, and that's what it needs to be. Amen. But we can't continue these campaigns of, it's really crazy to me, because if you see the people that are left, the remnants of the bottom unity movement, their main push right now is to keep people out, like Dave Smith, to keep people out, and which is the exact opposite of what their messaging was, and in reality, you just see what was really happening. You can't, just because you are a left libertarian, you don't need to come out throwing hands at every right-leaning libertarian. Like, just because, if somebody comes out and says like something really, really right, you don't need to attack them. That's the worst way to go about it. You can have civilized conversations about it, and at the end of the day, it's all good. Most of these people don't really care enough to waste their time arguing and attacking you. It's when you attack them, which is what happens more often than not.
And that's something we really need to look at too, because the Libertarian Party in the US is in a very unique situation, because we're not just one party. We are four parties under one banner. We've got our right libertarians, we've got our left libertarians, we've got our, what I call our centrists, which are those people that are just below that authoritarian line, right? And then we have our anarchists. Each of our two quadrants, we could draw into four quadrants. And there are some very fundamental basic differences between each of those groups, as far as, like, you'll hear people in the Libertarian Party saying voting is violence. And that, well, why are you a member of a political party whose number one goal is to achieve liberty in our lifetime through electoral success? That means you have to vote. So the thing is, we've got to unify all of these different factions, not underneath a platform or, an issue or something along that, but behind our statement of principles, that we are unified in fighting the power of the cult of the omnipotent state. And because none of these arguments that we have between each other matter until we get the rest of the world to understand that the government is always the enemy. So, and that's why I really appreciate this Liberty Unity message, because it really is something that each of those 4 political parties under the Libertarian umbrella can get behind. The government is the enemy. Once we can get people to understand that, then we can start quibbling about how far south we want to take them.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I completely agree. I love the quadrant mentality, even though it doesn't quite. It makes it very hard for me to place myself on it because I consider myself very right and very left on a lot of issues. But I'm a big fan of the fact that it identifies the top-down mentality, because it does not matter where you are on that, as long as you're underneath where we're at right now, which is like way up in the top right, is where the government is at right now. As long as you're below that, you're kind of an ally right now. Like, I am okay with, I don't care if you were a fucking Pete Buttigieg or Beto O'Rourke supporter in early 2020. I don't give a fuck. Like, if you're going to vote for Libertarian, if you're going to vote to like decrease taxes or to legalize recreational cocaine, as some wonderful person in the comments is talking about, then you're an ally. Like, let's go for it. And we need to stop letting them have this monopoly on the divide and conquer mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a question in the comments that's very interesting, so I definitely want to ask. The chair has very little authority per the bylaws. Is that a problem for either of you, the soft chair model?
I'll go first. It's not a problem for me. I understand the soft chair model. A lot of people look at, the chair as being this big leader, the CEO type, right? But in reality, with the soft chair model, you're more of like a shepherd. You're just kind of there to keep some things in between the lines. You are the one that is out there in front, that is kind of the face. Everybody can be the face, but you're the face. You're the one that has legal repercussions if something goes awry. I think that the soft chair model is gonna be really, really great for me. That's the way that I ran my company whenever I really was a CEO. I had several consultants that kind of had their own thing, and they were all focusing in their own deal. And my main job was to give them the tools to succeed. I believe that that's what the chair needs to do. We need to give each of the region chairs, each of the members, the chance to succeed. We need to support our candidates, and that's really it. It's not to rule with an iron fist. It's to hold people up.
Yeah, I agree 192%. I think it was intentionally written to be a soft chair model. And there's a long history in the OKLP behind that, why we wrote it that way. We don't just have a soft chair, we have a soft executive committee. The entire function behind this central committee is just to be a spear into the public and a shield from the public for all of our activists at the ground level who are doing the work. We are an organizational tool for the regions and for the individuals out there on the street. When we have something going on in Tulsa and we need activists, I believe it's the executive committee's job, the chair, to direct, to make sure that all of our activists all over the state know that, to be like, this is where they're going to be, this is how they're going to get there. And if there is, support needed, say, yeah, I want to go, but I don't have a ride. I'll be like, all right, I'm bringing my truck out there. I can fit 6 people in it. So find 5 people and I'm going to come pick you up in OKC. We will drive up to Tulsa and we will crush this event that we're throwing down. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it at all. I was one of the people who helped make sure that we had a soft chair model for precisely that reason, because all politics are local and it is the state's committee's job to make sure that our local people have the resources, that they're educated, encouraged, and empowered to do whatever they need to do to get things done. Whether it is a candidate running for city council, whether it is a petition like 788 to legalize recreational marijuana, whether it is legalize medicinal marijuana, whether it is the upcoming petition to legalize recreational marijuana, whether it is to lead a crusade or a protest on the Capitol steps against some stupid thing that the legislature does. And I guarantee you they do at least 30 a year that is worth protesting. I believe that the executive committee is the individual activist tool to coordinate with all of the other activists in the state. No, I don't have a problem with it. I'm one of the people who helped ensure that that's how it was coded in our bylaws.
All right. That seemed like a pretty definitive fucking answer from both of you. There was no wishy-washiness at all on that one. So Mr. Hagopian is in the comments and wants to know what are some of the most important functions the chair will serve over the next couple of years. Rex, you want to go first on that?
Sure. One of them is marketing. We need to engage in a better marketing practice. We have had a significant amount of money in the bank for over a year now that could have gone toward digital marketing over this COVID crisis, because everybody is looking at their phones and sitting on their computers and watching their streaming service. We have actually a volunteer in Edmond, Natalie Bruno. I think she just moved recently, though, who does this for a living. She's the person that purchases streaming service ad slots for a lot of major corporations. So we've got the resources available. We've had the money, we've had the connections, but we haven't done anything to put it out there. Another thing is, I know we've got a lot of Oklahomans who are big on social media. We've got Kevin and Todd who are big on Twitter. We had Will Fite, who was down here for a while.
Hey.
Yep. And, he was big on the social media, also in the Twitter sphere. We've got some people that are very savvy on the Facebook model that we could put together. The chair has the authority to create an ad hoc committee. We should be creating an ad hoc committee for social media and advertising that is creating content for the social media, and it wouldn't be anything out of our bank account to allocate $100 a month toward promotions on Facebook. So, all of those things in mind, I think that's probably the biggest thing that the OKLP chair is going to be facing over the next 2 years. The second thing is probably going to be making sure that our governor candidate has support and the resources at the local level to be able to organize his activists to go forward and hopefully improve on Chris's results from 2018. Those are probably the two big things I would say.
Yeah, I agree with what Rex is saying. For me, the two biggest things that we're looking at, social media, advertising, just overall is going to be a big part of that. Social media is going to be a slice of that. As for me, I've talked about it over and over again in my campaign. I think that the real world interaction is going to be a bigger part than the social media. I think that being out there in these marathons, being out there in these food drives and these neighborhood cleanups and things like that is going to be a bigger deal, because they're going to see us actually doing it, because libertarians have been winning online arguments and losing elections for forever. So we can continue this online presence, but the real world presence is what is really going to drive it. We need to allocate some money to get some people to go we have very, very significant concentrations of people in the metro areas, Tulsa and Oklahoma, but we do not have as much in the rural areas. We need to be supporting those rural areas more, because I believe that libertarianism is more palatable to those rural areas. In the metro, we do have a lot of progressives and things like that we can market to, and that's fine. But the rural areas is where we're going to win, because a lot of people really just want to be left alone by the government. So getting people out there, getting these people to go from the city to down there. So if we have to use a little bit of funding or things like that to get a carpool to go down to do the strawberry festival or the watermelon festival, or to go hunt Bigfoot down in Rex's part of the world, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to be out there doing these things that will really, really show people in person and have that real world impact. As for issues that we're going to face, we have a lot of bills coming up, like what Rex talked about. Recreational marijuana is coming up. We have a bunch of candidates for the governor race that are going to be coming up. We need to be focusing on supporting them, and really we just need to we have a lot of people with a lot of ideas, okay? A lot of really good ideas and things that they want to do and they want to get done, but they maybe don't have the materials or the motivation or the know-how to get it done. We have a vast amount of resources whenever it comes to people, like Rex was saying. And we need to get those people with the people that need them in order to get these ideas going and get these regional affiliates stronger and being able to focus on the things that they want, because each region is going to have different marketing. Each region is going to have different things that are important to them. And say we've got like Todd, who's a business guru up in Tulsa, and we've got somebody that's needing help with starting a nonprofit or something like that in a more rural area. We need to get them connected, even if it's not physically, even if we can just connect them, because we have a lot of strong people with different strengths. Like we have shout out to Drew Cook, Clean Libertarian. He's really strong on drug policy and things like that. There are people in the rural areas where drug use is pretty rampant that could use some of that policy, that could say, hey, like, you can be an addict and this is how you recover. Not only this is how you recover from it, but this is how the drug war has affected you. And to get that marketing out there is something that I feel that we need to focus on.
So I'll bring up Drew specifically because it plays off of something he already said in the comments. What are some of your ideas for political action involving drug policy beyond marijuana?
You want to go or you want me to go?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. I'm getting a lot of bouncy feedback, boomwiki in the background. I can't.
Sorry, I said, what are some of your ideas for political action involving drug policy beyond marijuana?
Oh, drug policy. I would like to see all of it decriminalized primarily, and I would portray it in a lot of our rural areas. We have very heavy meth usage in Oklahoma per capita. The biggest hindrance to moving forward on that is the fact that it is illegal. If it was not illegal, we would be able to reach these people in their homes, in their communities. We would be able to connect them with programs that would be able to take them off of that. We would be able to lower our law enforcement budgets. We would be able to do a ton of things if we could just get the decriminalization on a lot of these what are currently illegal drugs. So, it's very hard in Oklahoma because we're a very red state who likes to legislate morality. So it's a line that we have to be very careful, but we can absolutely put out messages out there about helping these people. I'm going to bring up the Tulsa County GOP vice chair who works for NAMI and is training law enforcement officers on how to respond to people who are having mental crises. A lot of those people are having mental crises because of their drug use. So being able to point out that type of activism in the community, maybe expanding and promoting NAMI's activities, will have one less kid get shot on the street because of a law enforcement officer who didn't know how to respond. So things like that would be the type of legislation, the type of programs that I would push.
For me, I think that the first step is supporting the medical and then the recreational marijuana. If you look at states like Oregon that just decriminalized everything, they had the marijuana first. I think that that's the first step in order to get people more, in order to make it more palatable for them. We can campaign on this stuff. We can promote Drew and his speaking, and we can go out there and teach them the difference between decriminalization and legalization and why one is superior to the other, et cetera, et cetera. It's just going to come down to education. But as far as political action supporting it, I think that the first step is recreational marijuana, and my term's only going to be 2 years, so I'm going to focus on that.
I like it. I like them both. Yeah, I think Oregon is really like uplifting right now. Like the idea that they actually passed that within the borders of the United States, and that we have a place where you can go do meth and not go to jail for it, is kind of mind-boggling. It's a huge win. It
is a huge win. I am super excited about the Portuguese model is finally being studied and paid attention to, because that has been the largest drug success in the entire world over the last 50 years. So having those types of programs here in the United States where people can point to it and say, yeah, it is an American value and it frickin' works. This goes back to what Kevin was saying, being able to point at these and say, look, our ideas, they're being instituted and they function and they achieve every goal that you were trying to achieve with the war on drugs without putting a single person in jail, destroying a single family, or shooting a single kid in the face. So, it's hard for them to argue against it when painted in that light.
Yep, 100%. The Oregon thing is great. Drew actually did an episode over it with somebody that was a lot more educated that really broke it down and explained it. You should go listen to that. But yeah, being able to show that these things work and they work well, and have for a long time is going to be huge for us. I just, it's my term's only 2 years. I don't think that we're going to see recreational cocaine in 2 years.
It's fair. Probably not in Oklahoma. Maybe in like Washington or Colorado or one of those other states that were already.
I don't know, man. I've spent a lot of time in other places, and let me tell you, it's pretty much recreational in most large cities.
That is true. It's really weird. I spent most of 2020 in a legal state. Actually, I touched most of the legal states. Actually, I was in Massachusetts and Colorado and California. I didn't go up north to like Oregon or Washington, but I bounced around and it was legal. Oh, also Michigan is legal. And then I came home to New York for Christmas, and I had to go back to like finding a dealer and like going over to somebody's house. I'm like, it's so stupid. The fact that I live in like the bluest state in the country, other than maybe California, and I still have to go to a friend's house and like watch TV for a half an hour to make it feel like a social get together just to like get some weed. It's fucking ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah, I've never been much of a recreational user. I didn't understand the struggle that it was, because marijuana back in the 60s and 70s, that it grew on the side of the road. It grew in everybody's yard. I mean, it was a wild, diverse crop that was growing everywhere in this part of the country. So, it wasn't ever a big deal to me, but then I hear the stories of other people and how they had to go about getting their hands on it. It's like, dude, you should have just come over to my house and walked out my back door. It was growing in the lot.
Right.
So
will there be if it's, or if maybe it doesn't have to be legalized, but will there be a marijuana patch in Liberty Mountain Farms?
Who says there's not already?
Fair enough. All right, man, I really need to come to Oklahoma. Fuck.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. But, you'd have to leave upstate New York. So you'd have to leave your gold shoes and your Range Rover and all that stuff. So.
I don't have either of those. I'm from the part of upstate New York where we have steel-toed boots and pickup trucks.
Yeah. Then you'd fit in perfectly.
Yep.
My first 2 cars were Dodge Rams.
Yeah, there's very little difference between the area around Syracuse and the area around Oklahoma City. Or maybe more like Tulsa, but yeah, there's very little difference.
Yeah, it's a good time up here. That's why a lot of people have the argument of, what state is more prone to go gold, like in a statewide something. And, people make the comments of like, Colorado or maybe New Hampshire because they're already super libertarian. I think it's going to be a state like New York that is so fucked up and broken that people finally say, all right, I'm done with this shit. Somebody else, please, for the love of God, give me somebody else. Like New Hampshire has no reason to like overturn the duopoly. They work fairly well. They do their shit. They're not, the only thing they're bad on is drugs. Like if you take the cannabis conversation out of it, New Hampshire is a great state. There's no reason to get mad at the establishment and overturn it. Same with Colorado, but other states.
The state that goes gold first is going to be the state that doesn't have a millionaire and billionaire running for office. That is going to be the ticket, is the first state that we are able to concentrate and devote the resources to overcome the media advantage of the duopoly. That's where we're going to go gold first, because money is everything. That exposure that's it. That's magic. That wins every election. Every single one on that level.
Yeah, I definitely I agree that we need to be able to market correctly for each individual person that might come to the Libertarian Party. The top-down approach. I think the idea of a Libertarian National Party is like oxymoronic at its core. Like the idea that we're going to fight over who gets to control the messaging for an entire country, which is really what the fight is over, right? The caucus argument, it's all about messaging and priorities. Everyone wants to say it's about values or friends, or it's about messaging. There's really nothing more. Are we messaging right, or are we messaging center, or are we messaging left? That's the argument. And neither, like none of the above. Like, why are we trying to control a national messaging for anything ever? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, but at the same time, we're having to play a game that somebody else wrote the rules for, right? The American political system was going for 200 years almost before the Libertarian Party was ever a twinkling in David Nolan's eye. So, and that's another thing that we've got to overcome, is the fact that they've had 150 years to solidify a base, to solidify messaging, to build an infrastructure, and to control the media, and to control all the laws for the elections and all that such. I mean, if we just had ranked choice voting and no political parties whatsoever, we would be a lot closer to a libertarian world. Mm-hmm. Everybody's a libertarian. They just don't know it because they believe that the government is the answer, when the answer is looking at them in the mirror.
All right.
Welcome back, Mr. Hobbie.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Sorry about that. I had to take a potty break.
Man, Rex just went off. I love hearing that, because the Larry Sharp messaging of like the 80-20 rule of as long as you agree with me on 80% of the issues, then we can work towards building a libertarian world, and then talk about the other 20%. That kind of idea, and everyone's a libertarian, they just don't know it yet, is something that really is clicked. The more I talk to people, the more I've worked in the duopoly, actually, going out knocking doors for Republicans and Democrats, but being able to basically not compromise on my ideals in those conversations, and really just be able to push libertarianism to these people under the guise of like a liberty-ish duopoly candidate, or maybe even a completely shitty duopoly candidate. I worked for Lindsey fucking Graham for like a week and a half on accident. Like I agreed to work for a congressional candidate, and then they were like, "Oh, so you're gonna knock for her and Trump and Graham?" And I was like,
I love how you're tiptoeing around who you were with. That's a politician right there.
I don't even know if I don't think I have on the show. People can go back and find out exactly what I'm talking about, because I was fairly public about it when it happened. But
yeah, I just want to say that both of y'all are great. I'm so glad to be here with y'all.
Mm-hmm. That was beautiful. But yeah, even when I was working for Trump and Graham, I was able to have good conversations with people about libertarianism, really, and pitch them some very unlibertarian candidates. But it was nice that I was still able to talk about Nancy Mace, who is the congressional candidate, and she is actually pretty fucking awesome. And I had no problems working for her. So that was helpful to really just be able to like, all right, the Republican Party has your vote, right? Okay, cool. Like that's all. And there were no legitimate libertarians running in any of those races that I was aware of that, I felt bad like talking about, but shit happens, right?
Well, so if I can approach this with y'all for a second, I want to point out that in the organization that you were working for, they've got different chapters at different schools all over the country. And I have dealt with our two biggest chapters in Tulsa, and that experience is entirely different than dealing with the chapter in Oklahoma City at OU. So the one that we have at TU and Oral Roberts University, both of those groups are open-minded, liberty-loving people. Some of them are Republican, some of them are Libertarian, but they all lean toward liberty on just about every issue. But then the one down south was we had significant problems where they were persecuting a transgendered person. So, you know, just going even in the same state from one school to another, you get a very different experience.
Oh yeah, and I'll actually clarify. I don't mind saying the names. I wasn't working technically for YAL at the time. It was one of their sister organizations controlled by Justin Grice, who is no longer a part of the organization for a myriad of reasons. Unfortunately, not that one. I wish that they had like gotten rid of his bullshit for that and for other like terrible things. But you know, now he might be a sexual predator, so they finally got rid of him. That's cool because he's out there doing his thing and still honestly doing work for liberty. Like, as much as I don't like some of the things that he's done, and I don't you know, obviously if any of these allegations are true, that's a huge thing, but he's still out there doing cool shit, and so is the organization itself of YAO. Yeah, and it's a very decentralized group of people like we believe in. So yeah, the different, every college is going to be different, and it fucking sucks that they had to go through that though, because that's not liberty. Persecuting anyone for anything isn't liberty. It's just that's
right. Well, all organizations are like that. I mean, the LP's like that. You have more. You know, I can't tell you how many people think that us in Oklahoma are all paleo libertarian, basically Republican monsters.
A lot.
Yeah.
Time.
Yeah. And you know, you've got two Rex. I mean, I don't want to name you, but Rex is pretty left. Rex is a pretty left libertarian. He's not that much further right than me. And you've got both of us running for chair. I'm one of the more left progressive libertarians out there. And, you know, we've got support from just about everybody. And this idea that that we're really super conservative, basically Republicans, et cetera, is false, you know? And so to paint one organization as that way, like Rex was saying, is pretty detrimental to the whole, because every little increment is different. Everybody has different key players and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's great to see that the LP, I think, is shifting in, like, as a whole in the right direction, and you guys are a good thing to point to for that. But there's stuff going on in other states as well, where, you know, people are finally, you know, working together and just moving in the right direction, putting their heads to the down and just going for it, rather than worried about, you know, if the thing that I hear a lot is, if we get legitimate, this might blank. I've heard that phrasing in like committee meetings and campaign meetings and like all sorts of stuff of like, if we ever get over here and people are actually paying attention to us, this thing that we did right now might reflect badly on us, so we can't do it.
Right. But you can't let the anxieties of tomorrow take away from today. You know, we're about 500, 600 winning elections away from having to worry about a lot of this stuff. And, you know, I say it all the time. People in the chat are going to make fun of me, but I have no want to be the most libertarian to ever libertarian whenever we're standing in the bread lines together. I don't want to be talking and bragging about how I kept those lib socks out and about how I kept the paleos out and all of this as we're watching our country crumble. And I think that what we're seeing right now is people are deciding that to put their differences aside and come together because we've got a bigger enemy, and that bigger enemy is the overreaching federal government.
Yeah.
My favorite is, when the forest is burning, are you going to put out the fire or piss in a bucket?
Right. Somebody said drink because I said my libertarian thing.
So I'm curious, on that note of not being the most libertarian to ever libertarian, what is the most unlibertarian belief that you have, Mr. Lawhorn? I'll start off with you.
To be honest, I can't really tell you, because I don't know anymore, because I don't know what's considered an unlibertarian statement. But back during the campaign, if I had to look completely through the platform, my most unlibertarian position was that I believe that there are some crimes so heinous and some people so horrible that the death penalty does have a function in our society. I do not believe that the state is the proper mechanism for that. I do not believe that we can ever have a government entity that is capable of responsibly using that tool. But at the same time, while I do believe that all life is precious, I believe that some people forfeit the preciousness of their life.
For me, I think that I have a lot of beliefs that are not labeled libertarian. There's a couple of things but probably the one that I get called out for the most is I don't believe that we will ever get to a point where we have totally done away with everything, and I think that in a post-state world, there will be multiple competing economies, and among those, there's going to be socialists, there's going to be communists, there's going to be barters, and I don't think that socialists are people. I don't think that they're trolls that wait in the night to steal your private property. I think that most of them want to be left alone. I don't think that libsocs are monsters, and I think that if you really, really get into debates and arguments with those that know what they're talking about, for the most part, they'll mop the floor with most people because we don't know enough about their ideology to even be cohesive in an argument with them. I'm always going off about Macno and Discord and things like that, and people make fun of me for it. But the reality of it is we need to know just as much about Macno and Marx and Brown as we do Rothbard, Mises, and Hayek.
Amen. I could not agree more with you on that point. Honestly, I actually read the LibSoc Caucus's platform this week for completely unrelated issues. And I have to say, it's probably the caucus platform I agree with the most outside of the one that I'm a part of, which is the Pragmatist Caucus. What I really love about it is its specific wording. When it talks about things like UBI and Medicare for All, it specifically says that they are not libertarian beliefs, but as a caucus, they're okay with it as a concession to get to the ideal world because they think UBI is better than our current Medicare or welfare system, which I agree with. So the fact that they specifically say in their platform what is and isn't part of the libertarian platform makes me just absolutely love it.
I just want to point out that Todd Hagopian probably just burst into flames whenever you say that. He and I have the UBI argument daily.
I mean, okay, so yeah, I won't even get into that. I'm just gonna leave that one alone. But Todd did mention that that it's a good thing you're not going for the most libertarian to ever libertarian because you would lose that award.
Big shout out to the Sober Caucus, the best caucus in the LP.
Is that a real thing?
That's a real thing. They have a Facebook group. They have a Twitter page. Drew is leading that charge. You should go check them out.
I actually have quite a few friends that could be a part of that. I have a lot of teetotaling sober friends. It's kind of interesting.
You should get them with Drew Cook, the Clean Libertarian.
Yep.
Yeah, he's had some of the most bomb comments in this very long thread. I don't know if I've ever received this many comments on a YouTube video in probably all of my YouTube videos combined. So this is interesting.
Yeah, this is a very active group.
Yeah,
and all
you
of
should see our Discord.
Yeah. These people are all active libertarians in the state of Oklahoma, and all of them are doing fantastic work. Every single one of them has got a project to further liberty outside of the Libertarian Party.
That is what I love to see. And I definitely, so I want to touch on two specific things. They've kind of been, Liberty Mountain Farms has been referenced, but I also want to touch on, Kevin, your t-shirt drive for your chair race. You guys are both doing something that I've witnessed, at least just within the last couple of weeks, to actively demonstrate what libertarianism means in a day-to-day society. So Kevin with working with charities and actually promoting this mutual aid society. Rex, you're literally an agorist. You're built completely self-sustainable, could be completely separate from society and the government tomorrow. Like if somebody actually magically pushed that Rothbard button that we all want to push and just blew up the government, you'd be okay. And you're one of the few people that would be. So
Well, give me about 4 or 5 months, but by the time it's done, it will be. Yep.
Okay. So we have to wait to push the Rothbard button. That's fine.
Yeah.
I want you guys both to speak on what people that might not have either the financial resources to maybe build a farm by themselves or even to run a chair race that doesn't take donations. What's a few things that you would encourage other members of the party to be doing in their daily life to demonstrate libertarianism?
First thing I want to point out is that Rex and them they've been doing this over the course of a couple of years. As far as Rex can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that they've invested substantial amounts of time, but you don't have to be rich to do what they're doing. I just want to point that out. As for getting stuff involved, we've raised $610 for local charities, but if you can't give that money, then give some time, just showing up at a food bank or food drive or something like that. Drew and them, another shout out to Drew and Caleb and them. They did a food drive during the wintertime, and that was their part. They organized this and they put it together. You don't have to. The thing about it is that people are charitable when they're able to be. You don't have to give them a T-shirt or something like that. That was just my avenue to do it. Going and reading books to kids at children's hospitals is free. They literally provide the books. We can't do it right now because of COVID, but those types of things, going and helping a neighbor that can't do something themselves, going down to Liberty Mountain Farms and helping them raise some rafters and things like that. Those are things that you can do to show that people can take care of people and we don't need the government to do it. You don't need to invest substantial financial means in order to do these things. A lot of this stuff is free. Caring and love are free. They're the most valuable things that we have, but they're totally free.
And they're a never-ending supply. It's not scarce. So yeah, I'm just going to go piggyback right off of what Kevin said and keep going with that with some more examples of the exact thing that he's talking about. There are dozens in Oklahoma specifically. A quarter of our kids are in poverty. Almost 30% of the state overall is in poverty. We have low outcomes in education. We have low outcomes in healthcare. We have food deserts. We have problems in every area of the state that the state keeps trying to fix and keeps failing to fix, that we can fix if we just put our words into practice. So find out what's going on in your community. That's the number one thing you can do, is educate yourself and figure out where those needed spots are in your community and then do something about it. You don't have to spend a ton of money to put together a big pot of ramen noodles to feed the kids in your local public school that don't have lunch. Because the school lunch cut them off because their family is running 2 weeks behind on the school lunch bill. That's not a big problem here, but these are problems that kids are facing all over the country. It doesn't take much to go to your local public library, look for a kid that is trying to pick out a book with their parents' permission, sit down with them and read to them and let them know that their parents aren't full of crap, that their education is important, that the stuff that they're getting out of these books is vital. It doesn't take anything to go start a community garden, because most of your communities will donate the resources if someone will go there and actually do the work. All of these projects are things that can be done without any significant time or money investment. So just get involved in your community in whatever fashion your community needs you. Even if it's going and sitting and giving your city council hell. Any of it.
I highly advocate for going and giving your city council hell, especially if you live in New York City, because they need it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so the comments are asking what you guys do outside of the OKLP for liberty, And so, Liberty Mountain Farms is a great example. Is there anything else from either of you that we haven't talked about that you guys are doing outside of the LP?
I obviously have the podcast that spreads liberty. If you want to say that's outside of the LP, Todd Agopian and I have that. We do that. I have my own podcast that I'm about to drop. That's basically just going to be educational, going over different thoughts of libertarianism so that people can get an idea. Because one big thing that happens is people kind of come in and they're like, oh, like I think I might be a libsoc, or I think I might be a paleo, when in reality they don't know what either of those are. They just heard somebody say it. And so educating people on that. I also have my nonprofit, the Carson Lee Foundation, which raises money for sick kids and their parents to provide housing in the Oklahoma City area. That's something that I just started doing. Donates meals to Ronald McDonald House and things like that. Because what happens with a lot of people is they can't afford housing whenever they're, because a motel's expensive. And if your kid's is in the hospital, you're going to be there for a long time. They can't afford it. The hospital does provide some stuff. The Ronald McDonald House does provide some stuff, but this is just a fund in order to get people motel rooms and Airbnbs and things like that. We don't help with medical bills and stuff like that just because we don't have the funding. But so that's another thing that I do. I also work on the MSEPS board, which is a group of health, safety, and environmental professionals that go out and provide safety and health consulting services for small businesses in order to get them in compliance with the government regulations that they have to do, even though we hate it, because most consultants are very expensive. So we do that for free. It's just a conglomerate of a couple of different ones. We also have I'm also a member of the Petroleum Alliance. One of the big things that we're doing there is we're providing, because what happens with a lot of companies, and especially energy, oil and gas companies, is they follow the OSHA standard, which is kind of the bare minimum. It's funny because Rex and I just had this conversation literally like 3 or 4 hours ago. Today. Yeah. And they follow these OSHA standards, which are kind of the bare minimum. And when something bad happens and they pollute a water source, or they blow something up, or they have a fire or whatever, then they can there's really hardly any repercussions against them because they followed the bare minimum government mandate that they had. This is to get companies to be more strict with their stuff and do the right thing. So those are things that I'm doing. It's providing private solutions for really government problems.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, I got so wrapped up in everything that he's doing, I forgot that I was even supposed to speak. No, I didn't know about all of that, Kevin. I'm surprised that you hadn't told me already. But no, we don't.
I didn't know about half of that shit either.
Yeah. We don't have much opportunity to do anything besides work on our house right now. I mean, we've got our own struggles that we're dealing with at the moment, but outside of the Libertarian Party, other than the farm, the primary thing that I do is I'm friends with the county assessor. He and I have frequent conversations about things that the county can do differently. I get involved in my local GOP since we don't have a local Libertarian affiliate down here except for the region. There are 5 registered members of the Libertarian Party in our entire 8 or 9 county region. So we don't have much opportunity to get involved in the community with that. But I spend a lot of time talking to my legislator, talking to my senator, and talking to the county assessor, who's a friend of mine now, and local community. I try to spread liberty everywhere I go. And I'm kind of fortunate. I got a very small degree of notoriety because of my 2018 run. So there are people down here that remember me, and, they try to get my opinion. So I just kind of try to guide my community toward more libertarian private solutions, and having some success, planting some seeds. But no, I don't have anywhere kind of the activism that Kevin's got going on out there.
Liberty Mountain Farms is doing more than any of those. Trust me on that.
Liberty Mountain Farms is awesome. I have to continually give you props all night, because that has been not only my dream for the majority of my life, but my dad's dream for the majority of his life, and something he's imparted to me. is the idea of being completely self-sustainable off the grid, not relying on anybody else for anything. We have solar panels on this house, and we live off of a well. There's a couple of things that have already been put in place, but the idea of being completely self-sustainable is kind of a pipe dream for both of us, or we've considered it for quite some time. So the idea of like having a friend that's doing it and living it out every day is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and if you guys know Garrett Leeds over at the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness project, there's going to be he interviewed with us for about 2 hours today talking about the project, and there's a lot more of the insight that talks about the plans that we've got going into the future, and it's going to be a full-service agorist educational center in the long run. It's just going to take years to get there because of a lack of resources and lack of time. I mean, two hands can only build so much. So, and granted, Victoria does a ton of work. I'm not disparaging her at all. But even with two of us working full time, and with two people coming down to help us pretty much every weekend, I mean, you can only get so much done in a certain period of time. But yeah, it's been a lifelong goal of mine and Victoria's both, and we're going to keep going.
That's awesome.
Caitlin, yeah, I'm sorry, Caitlin, please make sure that you get him in touch with us and get us some contact information. Because, Aaron rightfully pointed out there are 38 registered libertarians in Poto. However, I only know who 2 of them are, and I only know that because I know their brothers, because they're Republicans who ran for office down here. So it's difficult to make that contact. That's another challenge that we face that we probably need to do better as an executive committee, is purchasing that contact information and getting it out to our regionals.
Yeah, 100% on that. Another thing about that needs to be pointed out, because I think it's something that people kind of they muddy it up, but just because somebody's a registered libertarian doesn't make them a member of the party, and it definitely doesn't make them an active member. That's something that we need to focus on. Is that's what when I talk about, like, we have a less than 1% capture rate. It's like 0.68 or something like that of registered libertarians that are actually active in the party. And we really need to focus on reaching out to them, providing them with the resources, showing that that being a member of the OKLP has value and things like that, because there's 15,000 of them that aren't members. It's actually 15,000 and some change. I don't have the exact numbers, but so when it comes to that, we need to focus on getting these regions, even if it's just mailers or anything like that. They can pull voter records and things like that. I mean, there's some things that we can do as an XCOM and as a party, or you can do as an individual to really get this going. That's one thing that we really need to focus on, is that you don't have to be a member of the XCOM, or, if you're in one of the smaller regions, you definitely should be on the board. Just because there's not a lot. There's several regions that don't have complete boards because there's just not enough active members. So if you are wanting to get active, that's a great way, especially if you're in some of the more rural regions, like where Rex is and stuff. But you don't have to be on these boards or anything in order to spread the message of liberty or reach out to other libertarians. It doesn't take a lot to turn a little L into a big L. Even like financially, one of the big kickbacks is, paying for it. Our one-time membership is $24. We have a monthly option if you don't want to come up with that. To really break it down, it's less than a Netflix subscription. There's a lot of ways for that to get involved, and I just really want it to be known that you don't have to run for office. In a lot of these regions, you can have more of an impact if you're on these regional boards than if you're on the state party. The fact of the matter is that the state XCOM, like Rex indicated earlier, is a soft XCOM. If you really want to get stuff done, start a county affiliate, get involved with your region, things like that. That's the things that we really, we have a ton of people running for state offices right now, and a lot of them are coming from the metro areas where those boards are full up. But if you lose your race or anything like that, I would really, really want really encourage you to get involved with the regions and the counties and things like that, because we don't have a lot of affiliated counties. Even Oklahoma County, which is our most densely populated one, is basically dead. I mean, it's turnkey ready, but nobody has stepped up and taken that.
Yeah. I think a lot of the states have that kind of issue where we've got a lot of areas that are really heavily populated and have a bunch of libertarians, and they're fighting each other for that county chair seat. And we've got a bunch of other counties that have like almost nothing going on. That's a thing in New York. That's been a thing in most of the states that I've been active in. But we're coming up on the 2-hour mark here pretty soon. So I want to give you guys both an opportunity to, it's been a great, I could talk to you guys both for fucking hours. Like this could have been a 4 or 5 hour stream and I don't think I would have gotten bored.
Yeah, easily.
But I want you guys to both get an opportunity to give kind of like a closing remarks towards why someone should vote for you for chair, and then how to get in touch with you, how to follow you, and get more involved. Let's go with Rex first.
Okay, you can reach me on Facebook, Rex Lawhorn. You can find me on Twitter at GovRexLawhorn. It's the same one I used for the campaign. So if you're following me on there, shoot me a message anytime with any questions that you have. I guess for a closing remark, the only difference that you're going to find with me in the administration is more communication downward to the base. From what you have seen historically, not even necessarily from this XCOM, just from a historical level. I have been with this party since it began in 2016, since it came back in 2016, and I have invested my efforts. I have served on every committee except for the executive committee, and I have been involved and active, and I am just looking for an opportunity to push things forward for another 2 years. If you like me, great. I'll look forward to serving as your chair. If you prefer Kevin, great. I look forward to him serving as your chair, knowing that I'll be in his ear every day.
I love that so much.
As for me, Kevin Hobbie on Facebook, at Hobbie Real on Twitter. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to the podcast. You can email me. It's just Kevin Hobbie, Hobbie at iCloud. If you need anything, if you have any questions, if you ever just want to talk about, where you're at in the party and how to get involved, anything like that, then feel free to reach out to me. As for me, I don't have the experience that Rex has. Rex has a ton of experience. What I'm bringing in is new ideas and things like that. I really commend Rex and everybody that has come before and the things that they've got done and everything that they've been able to do for the OKLP. I think that we're at a point right now where we need to take it to the next level. And I believe that I'm the person to do that. If you don't want that, then Rex is your man. And if you vote for Rex, that's awesome. I'll be right there. I'll be right there still doing the things that I'm doing, still being active in the community, still being in Rex's ear. If you vote for me, that's awesome. Rex is going to be in my ear. So that's it.
I love that. You guys are making me very glad that I don't live in Oklahoma and don't have to make the decision between the two of you. Because you guys are making it pretty fucking difficult. I feel sorry for everybody in your state. But I want to thank everybody that was watching. And I definitely want to thank the two of you. Thank you guys so much for coming on and doing this. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having us, man. Thanks for having both of us, individually and then together. I think it's really good to get to see each other out of their element and then together, and just to see that this isn't a hard fought battle and things like that. This is the way that libertarian races should be.
This is the way every race should be.
No, we want the others to be bad.
Oh, that's true. You're right. Never mind. I take that back.
You guys need to be the best chair race in America right now. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button below because we need to break a threshold so we can import to the library and then monetize the channel. So that would be awesome. If you want to support the channel, Cash App, Fight for Liberty. we would appreciate any kind of support. These streaming platforms cost money to be on, so I definitely appreciate any and all donations. But again, thanks for watching.
Hey, side note, because he's not going to plug it himself. Liberty Mountain Farms also has a Patreon if you want to support them and what they're doing.
Not a lot of content yet, but we would appreciate it. Everything that you use will go toward the farm.
All right. Yeah. I didn't know that. Otherwise, I would have plugged it too. Such a humble man, Mr. Lawhorn. All right. Well, thank you guys again so much for watching. We'll catch you back here next time.